Frank, what's up, my man? How you doing?
Clay, what's up, man? How you been?
I've been doing pretty well. I always feel like this is the time of year where football's bittersweet because you've got the Super Bowl to look forward to, and this is as good as a matchup as we've ever had before. I honestly believe that with Brady against Mahomes. I mean, it's an incredible storyline. But also, then you look all across the months until August when we have football that matters again. And football is fun, but man, compared to every other sport, the off season is just so massive. But I do think we're underplaying how incredible this accomplishment is for the NFL as we get up on the bye week here and get ready to roll into the weekend. Certainly, the conversation on the Super Bowl will increase substantially next week. But how amazing is it that the NFL is, it appears, and knock on wood, certainly this football season as well as any of the sports seasons have taught us to be humble about whether or not the games are going to be played. But it appears not only is the NFL going to be able to complete its schedule, it's going to have every game played, and it's going to do it on time, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it really is. And also, watching the championship games last Sunday, there were people in the building as well.
Yeah,
which also kind of added to it. We have two teams here in New York, and not one, or I should say New Jersey technically, and not one of them played games at home with fans in the building. Buffalo obviously got a playoff game with fans, which was pretty cool. I think what helps football, you can almost create in a lot of ways your own bubble because there's really no travel involved. Even the Super Bowl, right? One of the teams getting there on Thursday, Friday, or something like that. It's going to be.
I think the Chiefs have said they're not going to get there till Saturday. I mean, they're treating it like a totally normal weekend game as opposed to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think that certainly helps. I think as opposed to a lot of these other sports, even college basketball, the NBA, baseball, where there was more travel involved, that you could see some complications there. But football kind of creates its own bubble. You kind of know where everyone's going to be at all times. Most of the time, they're going to be at the practice facility.
Yeah,
but it is remarkable that they pulled it off. And I was always one of these people. I didn't, even if they had to push things back a little bit, I've never had a problem with the idea of maybe the NFL push back into a couple of weeks of February. There's nothing going on in February anyway, and the playoff games are played in cold weather. What's the difference of the cold weather in late January or a couple of weeks later in February for a championship game? So they had a little time to play with. But you're right, the off season is absurd in the NFL. They're gone for a while.
We started off the show talking about the drama at the quarterback positions. What is Deshaun Watson going to do? Jared Goff now seems to be under fire in terms of being the guy going forward for the Rams. We have a tumultuous at other locations. I find this to be fascinating because the quarterback in the NFL, to me, the big story of Brady is he goes to Tampa Bay, virtually nothing else changes, and he alone – in conjunction with obviously the rapport that he has with the team as the season has gone on, puts the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl. And given that the NFL is a copycat league, I think there are many teams out there that are looking around and saying, we're a quarterback away from being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ourselves. If anything, Brady this year is just further solidifying how the NFL market as it pertains to players. There's quarterbacks, and then there's everybody else. You buying that idea?
Yeah, I've always been of the belief it's the most important position in sports. Now, the one thing, though, and I guess there's been some talk that there could be 16 to 18
or
different
more
starting quarterbacks this year, next season in the NFL. Not, when you watch Brady play, and the next night LeBron played, and the one thing about the two of them, they just raise the level of everyone there. There's a certain quality about them that they're not only great players, but they're also really smart players, and they know exactly what they need in order to win. I think Matthew Stafford, I think probably it's time for him to be on the move. I don't know why Houston would trade Deshaun Watson. So two things. Jared Goff, number one, something's going on there, because Sean McVay kind of took a subtle shot at him late in the season, and then the guy did play with a surgically repaired thumb, less than a week after having surgery, and he did win a playoff game on the road at Seattle, and clearly there's something up there that they're looking to move on from him. And Deshaun Watson, everyone looks at the numbers. Oh, he had a great season. How can you have a great season in your team be 4-12? And if you look at it, I looked at it, his first four games, and again, I like Deshaun Watson. And if the Jets have a chance to get him, I would absolutely go out and get him. But his first 4 games of the season, they didn't score more than 24 points in any of those 4 games. He had 6 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and here's the big one. They went 0-4.
Yeah.
In the NFL, your season is over when you start at 0-4. So I get it. He put up very big numbers later on in the season. They went 4-12. I looked it up. You look at guys, whether it's Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, like nobody goes 4-12 for their 4th year into the NFL. So I get it. Maybe the situation with the coach wasn't good. The organization maybe not be great. His teammates may not be great. They still went 4-12 though. Like, doesn't he have to take a little responsibility for that? It's like, it seems like it's everybody else's fault, but the quarterback. And you and I are just saying how important the position is.
Usually, when you go 4-12, the reason you do that is because you don't have a quarterback. Usually, the reason you pay $100 million to somebody is because it basically takes 4-12 off the table. Now, Texans could be a special case. I think there are a lot of details you can dive in there, but big picture. The NBA has turned into a league that is often as much or more entertaining off the court than it is actually on the court, and that's because of the player empowerment. They can force trades. There's constantly malcontents, people not happy with their team, people happy with their team, all these different moving parts associated with NBA teams. Is it going to become more common for quarterbacks? I know we've had guys like Jalen Ramsey and Antonio Brown who have kind of forced trades, but by and large, they don't matter enough in the larger universe like a quarterback would. Do you think this is a sign of the future where quarterbacks, even guys making a lot of money, are constantly sort of belly aching, creating angst, and making things uncertain in the NFL in a way that they have not been at the quarterback position for much of the past, 20 years or so, which is you go draft a guy. If he's good, you keep him under contract for basically his entire career and hope he wins you a Super Bowl. That has been the long-time recipe for success in the NFL.
I think this situation is going to be a bit of an outlier. And I think part of it is, the one thing, when you're one of these organizations and you go to a player and you say, everybody does it with their star player, we want to give you input. So he's giving them some input. And he says, could you interview Eric Bieniemy for the head coaching job? And could you maybe do this? Just go along with it. It doesn't mean you have to hire the person that he wants. It's still up to the owner and the general manager to hire who they want. But if you said you're going to give him some input and then you don't listen to anything he says, it's going to rub the guy the wrong way. And I think Deshaun Watson has done very well in Houston. I think the way the organization played that bothered him a lot. It is interesting for 20 years. If Josh Allen played in the NBA in a town like Buffalo, he'd probably be thinking, I need to get out to L.A. at some point. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. You've never heard, even though Aaron Rodgers said he doesn't know where his future is, but Green Bay is most likely just going to hold on to Aaron Rodgers. So it's still something about the NFL where when a guy goes to his team, for the most part, he feels pretty comfortable there. I have a funny feeling this will be more of an outlier. And I just think the situation has a lot more to do with ownership and management, with the way that they kind of didn't keep him in the loop on some things and him feeling a little ticked off about it.
I'm going to talk about this a little bit later in the show, but I don't know if you saw Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts, come out, and I'm going to read a couple of quotes from him. The Colts obviously don't have a quarterback because Phillip Rivers has retired, and it feels like it happened a long time ago that Andrew Luck just decided to walk away from the game. But Irsay said, and I quote, he knows, talking about Andrew Luck, how much we'd like to have him be our quarterback. There's just no question about that. But at the same time, we know for it to work out, he has to be the one that says, you know what, I'm ready. I want to really create a little bit of history and unprecedented aspects. I don't know if we'll see that. I think he's happy. He's raising his daughter. He has a wonderful family. He's a great Colt, and he knows that he can come back anytime he wants. But at the same time, we respect that he's made that decision. Kind of interesting because Andrew Luck obviously has set out the past 2 seasons, wasn't feeling well with his body, couldn't seem to get healthy. He's still not that old. I think he's only like 31. Do you think there's any way, those quotes from Jim Irsay, that Andrew Luck could be thinking about coming back, or do you think he's a guy that we'll never see again? It's interesting that would circle back up as the Colts are trying to make a decision at quarterback.
I think that the Colts, would love to have him back. I have a funny feeling that maybe they've heard some things where
It's interesting, right? Those quotes.
Exactly. I think that's almost like a love letter.
Yeah.
To Andrew Luck, where they don't want to put pressure on him, but maybe they even planted the question. Ask about Andrew Luck, and then here's Jim Irsay's going to go on and on about how much they'd love to have him. It's an interesting one because that's something that you very rarely see. But he had some significant injuries when he played. But to your point, 2 years out, and Brady keeps playing, as we know, and you could see what happened on Sunday because of the love of competition. He doesn't need the money. He loves the idea of being out there, competing and winning. It still makes him feel like he's a little kid in the backyard. I think that's what keeps LeBron James going. They have the love of competition and wanting to win, and that's what still drives them. And I have a funny feeling Andrew Luck has that too. To me, he's just going to have to balance whether or not he wants to do that from a physical standpoint, if he wants to put himself through that. But if I'm Jim Irsay, I think that's a pretty smart play what he did right there.
Well, remember, they built that offensive line to try and protect Andrew Luck after all the hits that he took. And there's now pretty good film. I mean, Phillip Rivers can't move, right? And they protected him pretty well behind that offensive line. So if you were trying to make the case to Andrew Luck to come back, there's a whole year worth of footage that you could put in front of him and say, hey, Phillip Rivers is the least mobile quarterback basically in the NFL. And we were able to keep him from getting hit very much. And he played at the age of 39 before deciding, hey, I'm ready to hang it up. Are you interested in coming back? And in that same interview, Irsay also said that he kind of joked that he stays around the facts in case Andrew Luck wanted to put in the I'm back facts, similar to Michael Jordan when suddenly he came back after hanging it up for a couple of years and returned to the game. It's a pretty intriguing idea to just get floated out there amid all this other drama surrounding the quarterback position.
Yeah, and you talk about getting hurt, and you think about Tom Brady, who never runs, who just sits in the pocket. And that's why I worry about some of these guys. Watching Josh Allen and even Patrick Mahomes, those guys got to be careful. I mean, Josh Allen is looking to run people over, and that's not going to last forever. And Mahomes, that was a simple run that he had, and it didn't even seem like that big of a hit that he took. And he ended up getting a concussion. Then all of a sudden, his status for the championship game was up in the air. Maybe Andrew Luck would have to change the way that he plays a little bit, because I think he is an aggressive guy and he did take some big hits, but he's smart enough where I think he could probably pull it off. It's still going to come down to how much does he miss the game, how much does he miss the competition, because Clay, here's the thing, we know this from players. Michael Jordan is like this on the golf course. The reason why he bets and he's crazy on the golf course is he misses the competition.
Yeah.
To me, it would come down to he'll be weighing how much do I miss the competition to how much do I want to put my body and put the risk out there? Because clearly there are guys like Tom Brady, who's 43, who's fine doing it. He's willing to risk his health because he enjoys playing and he enjoys competition that much.
We're talking to Frank Isola at the Frank Isola on Twitter. You can see him on ESPN. You can read him or listen to him at SiriusXM. You've covered Tom Brady for a long time. You've talked about him a ton, as anybody has who's in the world of sports, an absolute ton over the past 20 years or so as well. What does his trip to a 10th Super Bowl and doing it with a new team do to you, to the narrative arc of Tom Brady's career, and what is at stake for him as it pertains to whether or not he wins a 7th Super Bowl out of 10 or goes 6-4? Does it really matter much in the grand scheme of his legacy?
Oh, no, come on. Getting to 10 Super Bowls is incredible. And you could say he had a couple of wins where he was a little lucky. Well, he was also very unlucky in a couple of those losses.
Both against Eli, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, David Tyree, who, by the way, grew up right up the street from me, who caught the ball on his head. So, he got a little unlucky in those games. Now, there's a radio host, or used to be a radio host in New York, who said he'd rather be Joe Montana going 4-0 in the Super Bowl than doing what Tom Brady has done, where Tom Brady has lost. Well, here's the thing: if Joe Montana did go 4-0 in the Super Bowl, but he didn't just play 4 years in the NFL. There were other years where he wasn't even getting there 10 times, and then to do it this final time. Now, who knows if it'll be the final time against doing it with Tampa. Well, granted, Tampa had a very good defense. He's got very good weapons, but it also shows how smart he is, knowing that if I go here, I think we can do it. but he's elevating a franchise that is just like, yeah, they won a Super Bowl a bunch of years back, but for the most part, it's just been another team in the NFL. That to me is also the impressive part. And he did it by winning 3 road games and doing in the last 2 against, all-time quarterbacks with Drew Brees and also Aaron Rodgers. And Clay, here was my thing about the game on Sunday. In the moment of truth, Tom Brady had the 3 interceptions in the second half. I still think 2 of them were basically glorified punts.
Yeah.
In the moment of truth, when they needed to get into field goal range, he did that. When they needed to get first downs at the end of the game to ice it, he did that. In the moment of truth, Aaron Rodgers, who I think is a great player, obviously, probably going to be the MVP of the league. In the moment of truth, when he could have run, maybe he scores, maybe he gets stopped at the 1 or the 2-yard line, and they're probably going to go for it. In the moment of truth, he threw the ball into the ground. And the last 3 plays of his season were awful. So Tom Brady somehow finds a way. To me, that's that certain quality that he has that I just don't think Aaron Rodgers has. Aaron Rodgers going to the Hall of Fame is a great player, but that to me is kind of the difference between the 2 of them.
I mean, Brady beat 2 first-ballot, no-question Hall of Famers in Aaron Rodgers and in Drew Brees back-to-back on the road in his first year with a brand-new team to put himself into a Super Bowl. That's pretty incredible. You have covered a lot of games over the years, I'm sure, involving the Yankees, involving the Red Sox, paid a lot of attention to them. It's one of the great rivalries in all of sports. Yesterday, I don't know if you heard any of it, but we had Curt Schilling on the program reacting to Major League Baseball. So the Major League Baseball writers don't put somebody in the Hall of Fame for the first time since 1960. Curt Schilling says basically, hey, if I had never said a word about politics, I would be in. If I were a Bernie bro or if I were a big Biden guy, Obama guy, I would be in. You've written and talked about sports for a long time. Is the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame selection process broken? And what do you think of Curt Schilling's comments yesterday about his being left off of the Hall of Fame list?
Well, I do think there are probably some reporters, or baseball writers, I should say, who don't think that he's worthy of the Hall of Fame based on merit, and I do think there are some who are keeping him out because of some of the things that he has said post-retirement, which I think is a little unfair. Like I said to somebody yesterday, if Willie Mays on his deathbed said, I think the insurrection was justified and the election was stolen, they're not going to take Willie Mays' plaque down the Hall of Fame.
Right.
It's going to stay. I will say this, and I go back so far that I was at the game. This is all the way in 93, I think it is, or 95, whenever it was, when Toronto played Philadelphia in the playoffs, and it was a Game 5, and Curt Schilling got the start, and Philadelphia has to win to save their season. He pitched one of the greatest games you're ever going to see. And you look at his performances in the postseason. To me, that's what, from a baseball standpoint, that to me is what puts him over the edge. The 11-2 record. Go ask the Yankees what they think. When he wasn't feeling 100%, you want to talk about character in terms of an athlete's character. The guy wasn't nearly 100% in that bloody sock game. He goes out there and he takes the ball against a great Yankee team on the road, the curse of the Bambino and all this other nonsense, and he pitched one of the best games you're ever going to see. So for me, I think he's a Hall of Famer based on his pitching performance. And I still think, the writers do this. I remember I covered the Mets a million years ago. I was just starting out. An old-time baseball writer told me, I'm not voting for Eddie Murray because he was always a jerk to the media. And I remember thinking, that could be true, but it's not based on that. And, it should be based on how the guy is as a player. And, Eddie Murray is a Hall of Famer. I mean, the guy had, massive career. And I think Curt Schilling, you want to debate the baseball, but I still think the way that he's his performance on the field puts him into the Hall of Fame. I was surprised. I thought he wasn't going to get the 75% because last year he got 70. He only went up to 71. I actually think he's going to get it next season. I think he's going to get it.
Even though he asked to be taken off the ballot. I think it's a bad look for Major League Baseball because I do think the vast majority of people out there believe Curt Schilling would be in the Hall of Fame. And it's interesting because there are lots of debates but for his politics. There's a lot of debates we could have, like how do you handle steroids? What should happen with Pete Rose? Where I think there are really interesting arguments on both sides. I really don't think that there's very much of an interesting argument with Curt Schilling, right? I think most people out there who look at his resume say from a purely baseball perspective, he's in. And, whatever you think about Bonds and Clemens and even Pete Rose, there are legitimate debates that you can put on either perspective. There doesn't really seem to be one for me with Curt Schilling.
Yeah, every year I watch that Hall of Fame show. MLB Network does a really good job. So they did a feature with Tom Verducci. It was kind of like a Tom Rinaldi kind of thing with Tom Verducci, and he's sitting there talking about his ballot, and he fills it out, and he's got Kurt Schilling's name there. I'm thinking, Kurt Schilling must be going in. Then they throw it up to Cooperstown, and they have this big pomp and circumstance, and then the gentleman, I think it's Tim Meade, he reads from a prepared statement. He's going through the whole thing, the voting process, on and on and on. Then he gets to the end, and he says, and for the first time since 2013, we do not have anyone that's going into the Hall of Fame. I'm thinking, do I have to sit through this whole darn show for you to say, why couldn't you tell me before the show that nobody's going in? I mean, come on. I thought that was a little weird that they went through the whole thing just to announce that no one's going into the Hall of Fame.